You know how the anti-gunners like to say they want to ban guns to protect us, but the reality is we know that's not true. Of course, they never talk about banning other things that can be misused, whether it be, frankly, trucks, automobiles, or fire for that matter. And that's right, just last week, 11 people were killed in a mass arson attack in the country of Mexico. But no one is calling for the banning of fire. Let's talk about it when we get back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the U.S. Supreme Court Bar, and author of the brand new best-selling book, Disarmed: What the Ukraine War Teaches Americans About the Right to Bear Arms. Check it out on Kindle and audiobooks as well as paperback. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter if you're on Twitter, at Four Boxes Diner, get more Second Amendment information in addition to this channel. All right, folks. We've talked a lot about Cesare Beccaria, who was the highly influential criminologist and philosopher that our founding fathers used to a great extent to draft various parts of the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms. Cesare Beccaria was an Italian author, writer of a major book, so popular and important that both Thomas Jefferson and John Adams wrote down many of his ideas in their common book of notes. Now, the reason why I bring this up is Cesare Beccaria talked about why it would be stupid, absurd in fact, to ban fire or water, just because fire and water has the ability to hurt people. Specifically, what Cesare Beccaria wrote in the 18th century was, quote, "False is the idea of utility," which means usefulness, "that sacrifices 1,000 real advantages for one imaginary or trifling inconvenience. That would take fire from men because it burns, and water because one may drown in it. That has no remedy for evils except destruction. This set of policies, the laws that forbid the carrying of arms, are such a nature." Specifically, what Cesare Beccaria was saying there is so too as you would never ban fire because it burns or ban water because you can drown in it, nor should you ban arms from law-abiding Americans or from people, because the only people that will respect such laws are those that follow the laws, and the criminals, of course, will use arms to do bad things. Because as Cesare Beccaria also said, laws that ban guns make things worse for the assaulted and better for the assailants. They serve rather to encourage than to prevent homicides, for an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed man. Cesare Beccaria, 18th century, very influential to the founding fathers. Now, I want to tie this into what just occurred in Mexico. And I want to talk a little bit about some history associated with this. Just last week in Mexico, 11 people were unfortunately killed in an arson attack. Prosecutors down there in Mexico say a man hurled a firebomb at a bar after he was ejected because he was allegedly hitting on women in an annoying way, and he was kicked out of the club. And of course, 11 people were killed and 4 were injured in the suspected arson attack in the northern border city of San Luis Rio Colorado, Sonora, on Saturday morning. Now, what's interesting is that this young intoxicated man threw a firebomb into the club at around 1:30 a.m. As of this moment, I don't think he's been identified or arrested. So you are your own first responder in Mexico, just like you are here. The difference being in Mexico, you're not allowed to have a gun if you're a law-abiding citizen. Only the cartels and the police seem to have guns in the government. In fact, I believe there's only one gun store in all of Mexico, and that is on an army base that only you can go. You can only go if you're a member of the government. So this just goes to illustrate, if you ban all the guns, set aside the fact that the gun bans don't work because the criminals have them all over Mexico, but set that issue aside, you can still have these mass killings in a single event by a single person, in this case, arson. But no one is talking about banning fire, are they? They're just trying to focus on the bad guy, which just goes back to the point that the metaphor, the political propaganda term of gun violence is not true. It doesn't exist. We're talking about violence by maniacs and violence by psychopaths, whether they use a gun or fire or a bomb or whatever. And that leads us to my next point, to talk a little bit about American history, because it's very important for you to understand some of this history, specifically these other mass killings that have occurred in American life. And it's very important for us in the Second Amendment community to be able to rebut and deal with these situations where there are mass killings, mass shootings, because that is the best moment in time for the anti-gunners to try to take our guns. Because when emotions are running high and logic is running low, it really allows the anti-gunners to try to play on the emotions of scaredy-cat Republicans who lack backbone. Some lack backbone, not all, but some lack backbone and cannot stand up for the right to keep and bear arms when put under pressure. They fold like a cheap suit. I should also note this is not the only arson attack that has killed many people in Mexico. In 2019, 30 people were killed in yet another attack on a club by an arsonist, where people sealed off the exit ways and then they set the club on fire. 30 people killed there. Another mass killing with fire. Nobody talked about banning fire. And by the way, here in the United States, we are not immune from such mass killings with fire either. That's right, arson has killed many people in the United States in mass killings as well. Probably the most famous one, or one of the most famous ones, was in 1990, the Happy Land Social Club. The Happy Land Social Club killed 87 people in a single act of arson by a single man, a Cuban refugee, who set the club on fire after he got into an argument with his girlfriend who worked at the club. He went down the street after the argument, bought some gasoline from the gas station, came back to the club, put the gasoline around and lit it on fire, and 87 people were killed in New York City in 1990. Since then, there have been others. There were 17 people killed in 2010. Again, another act of arson by someone who set the club on fire. And of course, last but not least, another terrible tragedy was the Bath, Michigan, the largest killing of school children in American history. It is not at Parkland. It's not at Sandy Hook. It's not in these schools that the anti-gunners like to talk about. It occurred in Bath, Michigan in 1927, where you had 38 school children were killed when a crazy man put explosives around the school and exploded the school up. It killed 5 adults and 38 school children. 1927, Bath, Michigan. This guy was obviously a nut job. He killed his wife the day before and then killed all these people in the school. So the point here is this. When the anti-gunners like to talk about the dangers of guns and people and single people killing a lot of people with guns, they always want to talk about quote-unquote gun violence. But the reality is it's violence by psychopaths, criminals, and terrorists that cause the problem. Whether it be guns or the fires of what I just discussed or, airplanes on 9/11 or whatever it is, crazy people and violent people will find a way to kill lots of people fast in one way or another. Because as Cesare Beccaria explains, those who are willing to violate our most sacred laws, such as the laws against murder, will have no problem violating, frankly, ministerial type laws, malum prohibitum laws like not having a gun or not having a magazine or any of these sorts of things that the anti-gunners like to talk about. Because at the end of the day, don't forget that the anti-gunners want control. And they don't want law-abiding people to have guns because they want us to be serfs and subjects and not citizens. And before I close, I just want to ask our friends down there in Tennessee, where exactly is the manifesto of that mass shooter in the school down there in Tennessee? They're still talking about doing some sort of gun control legislation in Tennessee, but we haven't seen the manifesto. So how can we assess what went wrong and whether or not a law or not a law can make a difference if we don't have all the evidence associated with that school attack? Where is the manifesto? I ask again, and I hope people in Tennessee are asking that same question. Because again, it's these kinds of high-profile shootings where we in the Second Amendment community are at greatest risk. But don't forget, there's lots of other ways that people can kill lots of people quickly, as we've gone over in today's video. All right, folks, hope you learned a little bit something here today. The Four Boxes Diner. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We'll see you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.